Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today's webinar. My name is Dwayne Sian, and I'm the marketing strategist for IaaS at SherWeb. SherWeb is your one-stop shop for a full range of IT cloud solutions, such as high-performance cloud servers, cloud databases, cloud PBX, hosted exchange, Office 365, and other collaboration tools. Today, we're talking about how to leverage Windows 2008 end of support to grow your business, which will be presented by Erik Beauchamp from SherWeb and Aman Sahota from Microsoft. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box in your control panel. I may bring them up during the presentation, and we'll also have time at the end for some more questions. Also, at the end of the presentation, we'll be offering something special to all attendees, so stay tuned and look forward to that. Today's webinar, How to Leverage Windows 2008 End of Support to Grow Your Business, will cover what does Windows 2008 End of Support really mean, the consequences, and why it's important for companies to address. We'll also talk about the end of support deadlines, how to save money using hybrid benefit as well as reserved instances, and how to leverage end of support and SherWeb to migrate to the cloud or grow your MSP business, and so much more. Now, with further ado, we'll turn the time over to our first presenter, Erik Beauchamp, who is the SherWeb Product Director of IaaS. He has extensive product management experience with cloud-based professional software and has traveled across the US and Europe, helping software development and network monitoring companies. Erik, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dwayne. So hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. So as Dwayne mentioned, I'm part of the product team at SherWeb, working specifically on IaaS. So today we're excited to share with you the many opportunities that you can pursue as part of modernizing your customers' environments and workloads. So specifically, Aman from Microsoft will explain how to leverage the EOS deadline to quickly get started on this transformation path. So one thing to remember as we go through this session is that SherWeb is there every step of the way to build an Azure practice with you. So over the years, SherWeb has been a premier Microsoft partner, helping MSPs like you grow their business across all product lines. So whether Exchange, O365, or Dynamics, we've been offering all these products, and now Azure is the fastest growing portfolio. So we actually onboard new organizations on Azure every day across North America and Europe. And having performed thousands of migrations on our own private and hybrid cloud products, in addition to Azure, the SherWeb team is highly qualified to help you with any aspect of your cloud migration project. So some distributors allow you to resell Azure, and that's about it. It's like a SKU on a shelf per se. You're basically left on your own to learn how to sell and support Azure. With SherWeb, it's the other way around. So we're here as your business partner across the entire journey. So whether it's marketing efforts, initial onboarding, advising on the best architecture, deploying managed services in Azure, or answering support calls in the middle of the night, all of this expertise is there for you to leverage. So to give just one specific example, we all know project scoping is a critical aspect of any Azure opportunity. So on that front, a SherWeb solution architect is available to jump on calls with you and your customers to properly assess any project. So you get immediate guidance on your solution design and quote, making sure that they're optimized for your customers and your business. Whether it's your first Azure quote or your 25th one, this expertise will always be free and provided by certified cloud engineers. So this is just a glimpse of how SherWeb can help you with everything Azure that you'll learn and discover today. I will now turn the mic over back to Dwayne to introduce our guest speaker from Microsoft, Aman Sahota. Thank you.
Thank you, Erik. And now we'll continue with our second presenter, Aman Sahota from Microsoft. Erik and I have been working closely with Aman for some time now, and we can say that Aman is one of the most knowledgeable technical consultants at Microsoft who focuses on Azure, IaaS, and Windows platforms. We are very honored to have him here today with us today, presenting this topic, and everyone is in for a real treat. Aman, thank you very much for being here today, and the floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much. And once again, welcome everybody. I hope you guys can see my screen. So yeah, welcome to today's session. So I'm going to talk about Windows Server 2008 R2 and SQL Server 2008 R2 end of support. So what is really happening, right? And how does it really matter to us? So if you see the history of server products with Microsoft, so whenever a product is released, we come out with a mainstream support for 5 years. Mainstream support includes, where we release new features for that product. We also provide security updates and non-security updates, right? And after the 5 years of the product's life cycle is when we have an extended support period for another 5 years, where we do not release any new features, but we do offer security updates and non-security updates. So this is a very typical product lifecycle from Microsoft. And what does it mean for Windows Server 2008 R2 and SQL 2008 R2? So that means that we're coming to an end of support for these two products in particular. So if you notice the screen over here, so SQL Server 2008 and R2, we are coming to an end of support on July 9th, 2019, this year, which is, I think, about 4 months from now. And Windows Server 2008 and R2 is nearing an end of support early 2020, right? So give me a second here. Yeah. So over here, I mean, we all need to be, able to be compliant in our, in our applications, in our workloads that we are supporting for our customers. And end of support would really mean that there won't be any more security updates available, right? So without any more security updates, you're basically looking at security issues that can possibly incur your workloads, right? And you can see possible compliance issues, and which will eventually put your applications and businesses at risk. So what we recommend is by upgrading your current version to the most advanced version that are available. So respectively, for Windows Server, we have the 2019, which is available. And for SQL Server, we have the SQL 2017, which is available, right, for an upgrade. So, this is what we should be getting ready to, so to meet the deadlines. Now, there are a lot of options available over here on how we can go ahead and mitigate this deadline. So if you look at the security updates which are available, and some of the numbers that we have recently collected from our research. So over here, what we notice is about 4.2 billion records have been stolen by hackers in 2016 alone. And then 1 out of 5 organizations generally lose customers due to an attack, right? And 30% lose revenue due to an attack. Now, and of course, there's also been reported that by 2022, about $8 trillion of global economy is going to be compromised due to cyber crimes, right? So security is a top priority for all IT teams. We take that as a written, right? So new threats have made it even more harder for IT professionals to secure their data, their applications, and that's where Windows Server 2016 and 2019 really comes in, right? So these new products will give you the new capabilities to prevent those attacks, detect any suspicious activities, and give you those new features to features like give you privileged access, help you protect those virtual machines, harden your platform against any emerging threats. And talking about SQL 2017, so SQL has been recognized for the last 8 years in a row as one of the least vulnerable databases by NSIT. So yeah, and then and not to forget, GDPR is on the mind of both businesses and IT professionals. And with the new European privacy law, which took effect last year in 2018, it kind of affects any organization, right, that offers goods and services to people in European Union. And to stay compliant and to avoid any steep fines, organizations will need to have a strategy in place to be compliant, right? And of course, not to forget, there are other relevant compliance standards as well, like the HIPAA compliance, ISO, PCI, FedRAMP, and so on, right? So Microsoft has an extensive expertise in protecting your data, championing privacy, complying with any complex regulations, and so on, right? And with migration, there also comes an opportunity for partners, right? So we consider migration as an opportunity for partners, where if you think about migrating to Azure, so migrating to Azure is kind of a journey, right? So we divide that journey into these 4 different pillars. So first is where you do the assessment of what you currently own in your infrastructure, what are you running, what do your workloads look like, your application, the versions, supportability, those kind of things. And then we look into the migration strategies in which we will be actually migrating your data. That would mean maybe lift and shift, could be re-architecting the application, and those kind of things, and then optimizing it to meet the best performance for your platform, optimize your resources, and secure and manage your resources. So these are the 4 different pillars we actually kind of divide our journey into. And so we talked to partners, and analysts, and looked at a very typical scenario. So over here, we're talking about a scenario where a customer wants to move 100 virtual machines to Azure, right? So what it could look like from an assessment, migration, and optimization standpoint, right? So we do understand that assessment and migration. Within assessment and migration, the complexity of the number of applications is more like a determining factor when you compare to the number of VMs or the sizes of the VMs, right? And what we have seen is, typically the lift and shift scenarios, we can see the range between 30,000 to 80,000 USDs. And for optimized migration scenarios such as, refactor, re-architect, or rebuild, it can be much more depending on your customer scenario. And we have also heard that, anywhere between 30 to 80% of the projects that of the project which are typically the resell reselling the licenses, or just the migration projects, actually convert into managed services, right? And if you look at the CSP numbers, we have CSPs can make up to, let's say, 15% on Azure consumption through resale. But if you look at the managed services, that number can go up to 30 to 45% on just the operating system layer. And then, if you go even more deeper into the application manageability, or re-architecting the application, you can see managed services revenues go up to 60% as well. So, partners used to generally bill, projects in a different way earlier, right? So earlier, the assessment part was separate to the migration part, right? So this was a common trend that we've seen in the past. But today, the way we are seeing as the data comes in is partners are moving on with the projects where they provide the pre-migration assessments along with the migration itself as one single project for the customer, and there's no additional charge for it. So this is all in hope to convince the partners, or convince the customers, or any business decision makers at the customer's end for maybe a larger digital transformation projects and things like that. So having said that, there are a lot of opportunities available in managed services. And you can think of managed services as as for example, let's say providing monitoring services, deep security protection, optimizing your customers' Azure infrastructure, and those kind of things, right? So, and all of this, having said all of this, will all begin with the first few workloads that you migrate to Azure. So what are the options available to your customer's environment, right? So when we talk about options in respect to 2008 and R2 end of support, so in terms of Azure, there are 3 basic options, right? So first is the rehost, and second would be where we categorize refactor, re-architect, and rebuild. So rehost basically means that you just want to lift and shift your workloads to Azure. Let's say you're ending your 2008 SQL Server end of support, and you don't have enough time to upgrade your SQL environments, or you do not have enough time to potentially change the application or the database to more of a managed services. You still want to remain on 2008 or 2008 R2 environments. You can potentially move them to Azure like a lift and shift operation without changing any code. right? And with that, what you get is, with moving to Azure, you get free extended security updates for 3 more years. So yes, that's right. So, so if you're looking to migrate your existing 2008 and R2 workloads to Azure, you get 3 additional extended security updates for 3 more years. And then of course there's another option to, where you are, open to a little bit of, changing your application, changing your code, or maybe, building out a new architecture altogether. That's where we, look at the most advanced services available from Azure. Maybe talk about some of the platform as a service features that come up with Azure, right? So that's where we are kind of refactoring your application, designing the entire new architecture, or maybe even building a new application altogether, right? So these are the 2 options just from Azure. But if you want to remain on-premise with your 2008 servers, you don't have time to upgrade or change anything. You can still remain on-premise, but over here, you're looking at potentially, buying extended support after these 10 years expire, right? So, or of course, you have an option to upgrade your 2008 environments to 2016 or Windows Server 2016, 2019, or even SQL Server 2017, right? So there are a few options available in this respect. Right. So let's talk about what are the options available in Azure in respect to running a virtual machine, right? So when you run a Windows virtual machine in Azure, um, you're basically, let's say you start up your new Azure subscription, you set up a new virtual machine in Azure, and you have a normal pay-as-you-go subscription. You're basically looking at an all-inclusive Windows Server VM meter. So what this means is you're basically paying for the compute cost, which is represented by the Azure VM icon, and then you're also paying for the Windows Server part, which is the logo. Like, you can call it like a licensing part, right? So that's how you start. But then if you have Azure Hybrid Benefit, Azure Hybrid Benefit is nothing but the software assurance along with the license. So we'll talk about what is hybrid benefit in next few slides. But if you have software assurance, you can bring your own license in Azure and then only pay for the VM meter in Azure. What this will give you is this will allow you to run a Windows virtual machine in Azure at a cost of a Linux VM, right? And the third option is reserve instance, right? So let's say you don't have software assurance, but you're still looking for some discounts. So we have a service called reserve instance, through which you can prepay the amount for that virtual machine for a term of either 1 year or 3 years, and with that you get some discounts. And so you're basically reserving that instance for 1 or 3 years term. So you get some discounts on that on the Windows Server part, and then you're only going to on top of that you're going to pay for the core meter. And then comes this is probably the maximum discounts that you can see in Azure, is when you have a reserved instance running along with Azure Hybrid Benefit. And there's another option. If you do not have software assurance, there's a new server subscription in CSP, which will also make you eligible for Azure Hybrid Benefit. So using the server subscription in CSP, along with reserve instance, you will have the same benefits. Right, so let's jump into Azure Hybrid Benefit and Reserve Instance for Windows Server and SQL Server. Right, so what is Azure Hybrid Benefit? Right, so basically this is more of a software assurance benefit, right? So if you go ahead and purchase your Windows Server license or a SQL Server license along with software assurance, you have a benefit to bring those licenses, or or mobile, kind of move those licenses between your on-premise and your Azure environments, depending on the editions. So, so with software assurance, you can bring your Windows Server CALs and run those virtual machines in Azure, and only pay for the base compute rate. which will give you about, let's say, 40% discounts or 50% discounts on Windows Server VMs and 40% on SQL Server databases. And which are the products which are eligible for hybrid benefit? It's only the Windows Server and the SQL Server which is eligible for Azure hybrid benefits. And the way it works is there are slightly different terms for Windows Server hybrid benefit and SQL Server hybrid benefit. So let's look into that. So this is, so you can see the pyramid on the screen, right? So this kind of represents, you running your Windows VM in Azure. So at the bottom, we have the infrastructure cost. That's the compute cost for running that virtual machine. And on top of that, we have the Windows OS cost, right? So with hybrid benefit, you are only paying for the infrastructure cost, not the Windows OS cost. So that will give you some savings. And what does Azure Hybrid Benefit offers? So assume that you have a Windows Data Center license with a software assurance. What this will give you is each 2 processor license, or will give you each set of 16 core license. And a 16 core license, you can either run it as a single virtual machine with up to 16 cores, or you can run 2 virtual machines, each up to 8 cores. This is with the data center. And with the standard, you get again the same thing, 2 processor license or 16 cores. And again, we'll give you the same eligibility, in order to run either 2 VMs with 8 cores or 1 VM with 16 cores. And the difference between data center and standard edition with software assurance is, if you have a Windows Server data center license with software assurance, you can run that virtual machine both on premise and in Azure. So run it concurrently in both the environments. As compared to standard server with software assurance, you will be able to run it either on premise or just in Azure. Okay, so this is the only 2 difference between data center and standard, but everything else, based on the number of cores, you will be able to use those licenses in Azure. And let's talk about how do you activate hybrid benefit, right? So if you have experience in setting up a virtual machine in Azure, you must have seen a small option, like a toggle option at the bottom that says, do you have a Windows Server license? So you have to either give it, yes or no, and confirm the terms, right? So on the screen you can see. So for anybody who has not created a Windows virtual machine in Azure, so that's the basic page where you fill in the VM name, put the username, password, subscription, resource group, and the location. And right under that is where you have to provide an info that says you either have software assurance or not. So that's how you will activate your hybrid benefit for that particular virtual machine in Azure. And the second scenario would be, let's say you have a virtual machine that's already running on premise, right? And how do you move it to Azure? So you can use Azure Site Recovery. That's it's like a migration or a or a recovery service, you can call it. So Azure Site Recovery also gives you capability to migrate your Hyper-V, your VMware, or your physical servers to Azure. So it will replicate those servers up to Azure. And when you replicate them to Azure, you will run it like any other virtual machine in Azure, right? So that's one way of migrating, but there are other ways as well where you can upload your VHDs and things like that. Now the question is, if you have a virtual machine that's running in Azure, which is not activated for hybrid benefit, and at a later point you want to activate that, you can use there are some PowerShell scripts available in our documentation site. You can use those PowerShell scripts to activate hybrid benefit on those particular VMs. So it doesn't require any downtime. It's pretty straightforward. And the billing is per minute, right, for virtual machines. So moment you activate it, that's when your billing changes. Cool. So let's talk about one of the scenarios with Data Center Edition. So over here, we have a customer who's running Windows Server Data Center Edition licenses with software assurance. So over here, you can see that the customer has 3 physical servers with 16 cores each. And it's a highly virtualized environment with Windows Server 2016 Data Center Edition. And in total, they have 48 core licenses, right? Now, what are the requirements? So the customer is looking to, run 2 Windows Server virtual machines in Azure for dev test purpose, and these 2 VMs need to have 4 cores each. So for that, they have identified the A4. Let me actually bring the pointer here. Sorry. So over here, they have identified A4 version 2. This is a VM template in Azure as the perfect fit for their dev test purposes. And they also have a second requirement where they want to migrate their inventory tracking system, right? And then the inventory tracking system requires 4 Windows Server VMs with 8 cores each. And for that, they have identified D8 version 3 virtual machines. This is again a template, right? Now looking at their physical environment, they had 48 cores in total with 2016 data center editions with software assurance. So what this will allow them is, this will allow them to run 6 virtual machines with 8 cores each, or will allow them to run 3 VMs with 16 cores each, right? So looking at what is available to them, they can run 2 of their virtual machines with hybrid benefit for their dev test purpose, and 4 of their inventory VMs as well. Now, if you look at the savings that they're getting with hybrid benefit, so running 2 of those dev test VMs is going to cost them about 4,000, roughly around 4,000 USD for a year. But with software, with hybrid benefit, will give them a saving of 33% and gives them about 2,700 USD. And for their inventory tracking system, they're seeing a potential saving of up to 48% for the entire year. And in total, they're looking at 46% savings, right? So this is a great benefit for Data Center Edition. And then I have another scenario with Standard Edition where there's another customer that has 2 physical servers with 16 cores each. And there are 4 VMs running per server, so like 8 VMs in total. And they have the 2012 Standard Edition with software assurance, which gives them 8 processor licenses, right? And they are looking to move one of their aging servers workloads to Azure. So they have identified 2 virtual machines to run in Azure, and those 2 VMs will pick up a template of D4 version 3. And because they have 8 processor licenses of 2012 Standard Edition, hybrid benefit will allow them to run 8 VMs up to 8 cores each. And because the customer just wants to run 2 VMs, so just 2 processor licenses are enough to move them to Azure. Now, because it is a standard, they cannot run these environments concurrently on-premise and in Azure. They have to move them to Azure, right, in either location. So if you look at the savings over here, without hybrid benefit, we're looking at about 6,500 USD for the entire year. And with hybrid benefit, they're looking at about 49% saving. Okay, and do you want to save even more? So we have Azure Reserve instances available over here. Okay. So what is Azure Reserve Instance, right? So it's a way of purchasing Azure base compute with great flexibility and price. And in return, what you have to do is you have to pay an upfront cost for running that virtual machine for either 1 year or 3 years term. And then you have to make some other decisions as well. So what are the decisions that you have to make in running your virtual machine as a reserve instance? Number 1 is you have to select the term. Either it's a 1 year term or a 3 years term. Second is you have to choose the type of virtual machine. So it's either going to be, let's say the D series, D4 virtual machine, or any other VM that you can choose, right? And then you have to choose the region where you want to run those VMs, and then the assignment level, where do you want to assign those, right? So over here with reserve instance, a customer buys a specific type of virtual machine, base compute, in a specific Azure data center and pays for it upfront, either for, let's say, 1 year or 3 years, right? And then he knows that he's going to get the best possible pricing for this because Azure has these unique services, right? When you talk about hybrid benefit. So, so if you step and think about, what kind of customer is be interested in this, so it's going to be a customer who has, moved from, let's say, a trial phase or a proof of concept project and is now running full-time workloads in Azure. And they kind of consider themselves a pretty committed customer, right? So for these kind of scenarios, these kind of customers, that's where Azure Reserve Instance is the best match. That's where Microsoft can give these customers huge discounts, and and have them remain on Azure for that respect. And let's talk about flexibility, right? And also talk about some of the base prices. So with Azure hybrid benefit along with reserve instances, we have seen a saving of up to 82% as well on running a particular virtual machine. So over here, what you see is, a virtual machine that is running, in a pay-as-you-go subscription without any reserve instance and hybrid benefit. And over here, we have a same virtual machine which is running with reserve instance and Azure hybrid benefit, which sees about 82% saving. And if you do not have hybrid benefit, you can still use just the reserve instance and get about 72% savings on your infrastructure. Reserve instance gives you the best flexibility. So you have complete control over these reserve instances. You can reassign them to a different team, different users, different groups in your department, or a different company altogether, right? And one of the most important question that a customer is going to ask you is, what if my business need change, right? What if I don't want to run D4 series virtual machine anymore in West Europe data center? I want to run, let's say, an E series virtual machine in East US, right? My project needs have changed. So what happens in that respect? So with reserve instance, Microsoft will give you complete flexibility in exchanging those virtual machines as well. So let's say you want to move from in a D series running in Europe data center to an E series running in US data center. It's completely possible in order to exchange those, and you do not lose your reserve instance credits. So the way it works in the background is whatever duration is remaining in your first reserve instance is that's kind of collected in a prorated basis. That credit is then applied to the new term that you sign up for your E series in US data center, and you have those credits applied over there. So it's a complete transfer of those credits. So you don't have to worry about that. And then the customer will also ask you that what if I don't have the project anymore and I don't want to run those VMs, or my needs have changed and I don't want to run the VM anymore, right? So in that terms, you have complete flexibility in canceling those virtual machines as well, reserve instance VMs as well. You will be refunded on a prorated basis. There will be a cancellation fee that will be applied to it, but then you will be refunded on the remaining amount. Right. So if you compare it with AWS, AWS has reserve instances as well. They have two types, a standard and a convertible one. Standard is where you cannot change those VMs types. They have to remain in the same family. You cannot reassign them, right? And then they also have the convertible ones, which allows you to change it in AWS, but you have to stick to a 3-year term. So there is, again, a huge difference in the services that are offered by Azure and AWS. This is again a quick scenario for running Azure Hybrid Benefit with reserve instance 1 year. So this is the same scenario we talked about earlier, where they're moving their LOB application to 2 VMs of D4 size. So with just Azure Hybrid Benefit, we were seeing a savings of about 49% approximately. With so you can see this this pillar in between that is just with Hybrid Benefit. But with Hybrid Benefit and reserve instance, you have additional savings, so total of about 70% saving. And if you look at the 3-year terms, that 70% saving convert to 80% savings. Right, Azure Hybrid Benefit for SQL Server. So, so before we deep dive, just I want to do a quick recap on few of the deployment options available for SQL databases. So in SQL databases, we have 3 types, right? So we have a single database, elastic pool, and a managed instance, right? So a single database, which focuses on a database scope programming model, and it's mainly for applications which have a very predictable pattern, or kind of a relatively stable workload, right? Because each database is assigned a certain amount for the resources. And compare it with elastic databases pool. Again, it has the same database scope programming model. It has everything that a single database applied, but it's more optimized for a multi-tenant SaaS applications, right? And then we have the SQL managed instance, right? So managed instance, I think of it more of a lift and shift scenarios, where you want to move your SQL servers to Azure, but you don't want to manage it in Azure, right? So moving your SQL servers in Azure in a PaaS environment. So that's where managed instances come in, right? So it gives you that flexibility of fully managed service. Now, how is this all made possible in terms of Azure Hybrid Benefit is, so earlier we were running a DTU-based model. If you're familiar with Azure SQL databases, we were running DTU-based model, but now we have a new model, a vCore-based model as well. So both of these models are available concurrently. But if you're looking for Azure Hybrid Benefit, where you can move your SQL Server hybrid benefits, you have to run in a vCore based model. So this is about Azure SQL database, but of course, if you have a SQL Server VM running in Azure, you will anyways have a vCore based model for a virtual machine. So what are the options available for hybrid benefit for SQL Server? So let's say you have a SQL Enterprise 1 core license with software assurance. So a SQL Enterprise 1 core license will give you a flexibility to run one business critical vCore in Azure, or one business enterprise core, or you can also you can even run 4 general purpose vCores as well. So you can convert your enterprise to general purpose, and so general purpose will so when you convert that, you can use it for 4 vCores for your enterprise core license. And talking about standard core licenses, so if you have a SQL standard 1 core license with software assurance, you will only be able to run one general purpose vCore. And with enterprise and standard licenses with software assurance, you cannot concurrently run on each environment. You have to either use that license on premise or in Azure. However, there is an exception. If you are doing a migration, we have a one-time exception for 180 days to run it concurrently on both the locations. All right. And how do you activate hybrid benefit for SQL Server? So this is the Azure portal where you're trying to create an Azure SQL database. And over here, you have an option, similar option that you see in a virtual machine, which says, do you have a SQL Server license? And you can either choose yes or no. And then based on the number of cores, your pricing will be adjusted. Now, you may also want to ask, what about running SQL Server in a Azure virtual machine, right? So we have a predefined image that's available in the gallery called Microsoft Certified Bring Your Own SQL Server Gallery Image. So that is a specific image that you must use in order to build your virtual machine in Azure, because that VM is optimized for enabling your hybrid benefits for SQL and your Windows Server. But of course, if you have a regular virtual machine where you have a SQL Server running and you want to apply your hybrid benefit for SQL servers, you can use the CLI commands to change that. So there's a resource provider that will be triggered that will optimize the billing. So we have blog post on how to do that. Okay. Again, a quick scenario for a customer that's running a SQL Standard Server Edition license with software assurance. So you can see over here, there's a customer that has 3 SQL VMs with 8 cores assigned to each VM. And they have a 2016 Standard Edition with software assurance, like a total of 24 cores. So they want to move their one of their database to Azure SQL database, a PaaS model, and run it in a vCore with 8 general purpose cores, right? So because they have 24 core in all together, a hybrid benefit will allow them to run 24 general purpose vCores, right? So they can convert their 8 core licenses and run 8 general purpose vCores in Azure SQL database. It can be either managed instance, single database, elastic pool, whatever they need. Right, so if you're looking at single elastic pool, we are seeing about 40% saving, and the same for managed instance as well. Okay. Moving forward, we have the hybrid benefit savings calculator. For this, I would like to show this in the portal as well. So over here, if you go to azure.com/hybrid benefit, you will come across this hybrid benefit savings calculator. It's a very simple tool. So all you have to do is, let's say you're calculating the benefits for your Windows Server, you will need to put in the number of cores that are that you have with software assurance, and what region you're trying to set up that virtual machine, and the instance size, and the number of hours a month. And then it will give you the eligibility for how many instances you can run with these number of cores. Same thing for SQL Server virtual machines. So over here you will put in the editions. So over here you will choose, let's say you have standard or enterprise edition SQL Server licenses and the number of cores that you have, and then if you're running it as a virtual machine in Azure, you'll specify the instance size and we'll give you the eligibility. If you are moving your hybrid benefits to a SQL database, again, you will mention the number of cores for your standard edition, enterprise edition, and what type of instance you need, managed instance, or you're running the database as a single database, elastic pool. You will choose those, and you will get the number of eligibility over here. So this is how you calculate your hybrid benefits. I also want to talk about reserve instances. So this is the pricing calculator. So if you go to azure.com again, /pricing/calculator, this will take you over here. So if we want to calculate our pricing for reserve instances, so let's say I choose a virtual machine over here. It's very simple. I will choose the region. So let's say my region is West US. My operating system is Windows and OS only. It's a standard tier. And let's say I am running a D4 version 3, which has 4 CPUs, vCPUs, and 16 GB of RAM. And if I go with pay-as-you-go model, it will give me a pricing of, let's say, 305 USD per month for this single virtual machine. But if I want to check how much it's going to be for 1 year reserve instance, 1 year term, it'll give me about 18% discount, and the pricing will be 250 USD, from 305 to 250 for 1 year reserve instance. And then for 3 years, it'll come down to 208. So this is the maximum discount you can get on this VM type with 3 year reserve instance. However, if you have hybrid benefit all you have to do is just enable this, just enable this toggle over here. Your hybrid benefit will get applied, and you will get even more further savings. So you can see all the way from $305 per month for this one virtual machine, you've come all the way down to $74 with reserve instance and hybrid benefit. Right. So this is what I wanted to show you in the calculator. So let's go back. So Azure is the most cost-effective cloud for Windows Server. So if you're looking to migrate your 2008 and R2 in AWS, it's going to be slightly more expensive. Considering you have put in the factors of you have hybrid benefit, you are going with Azure Reserve Instance, and then of course not to forget, moving your 2008 environment to Azure will give you 3 years of free extended support, right? So putting all those factors, you're looking at a major discount in Azure. So these are some of the top scenarios that I've put together. When we are thinking about 2008 end of support. So it's just not about server renewals or moving your legacy applications running on Windows Server or with SQL servers. You can also potentially think of Azure as a backup and BCDR. You can move your dev test environments to Azure. You can talk about hardware refresh. We have a TCO calculator as well, which I think I can show you, which can give you an estimate of your ROI. When you're moving your on-premise environment to Azure. So what's the ROI on that? And then you can save money with migrating virtual machines with hybrid benefit, reserve instance. If you don't want to use your VMware, or a vSphere site as a second site, you can use Azure for that. And then of course we have the latest service that just went in public preview this week, Windows Virtual Desktop. So Windows Virtual Desktop can also be clubbed with reserve instance and hybrid benefits. Right, product innovation. I wanted to throw in this slide over here because since we're talking about moving out of 2008 environments, so there's a long way that we have come all the way to 2019. So if you compare, in 2008, we had our first Hyper-V version released, and we started supporting live migrations in 2008 R2, and then coming all the way to 2019, we are supporting same Windows Server with much more different features. We have hyper-converged infrastructure, we have Azure integration, we have Linux containers, storage spaces direct, network virtualization. There's so many new functionalities that come up with new servers. And same thing for SQL servers. With 2000, 2005, we were talking about XML, Management Studio, mirroring, and now with 2017, we're talking about end-to-end mobile BI. We are talking about artificial intelligence built in, HD Inside. So many different new services available. And of course, if you're looking at a managed instance or like a PaaS service for SQL databases, so you can scale your performance anytime, anywhere, without any downtime. You can easily manage and monitor your business critical functions. You can learn and adapt dynamically based on your application's need. And work with your preferred development environments. You can help and protect, secure your application data, and recover from disaster without any issues with SQL databases. Right, and then grow your migration practices. So if you haven't come across Azure Migration Center, this is an excellent library tool that you can call it. So if you go to azure.com/migration, this is where we have our migration center. This is a one-place shop for looking at all the tools available to assist in your migration. So we have Microsoft tools specifically for assessment, like Azure Migrate, database migration assessment, SQL migration, the Maps toolkit. We have tools just for migration like Azure Site Recovery, database migration services, Azure Security Center for optimization. And then of course, we have a lot of tools available from our partners as well. So what we recommend is, you mix the tools that, meets best of your requirements. So of course, the end goal is that, you migrate successfully to Azure. So I think, quickly show this as well. I think this will be helpful. So over here, we can, let me open this up. Right, so this is our migration center. So over here, you can select the type of tools that you want to read upon. So let's say you're looking into assessment. Simply click on more, and then you scroll down. So we have our Azure Migrate, and we have these partner tools that are available. And we'll also give you a list of, excuse me, we'll also give you a list of services that are available out of each of these tools. So this is about your workloads, your data, your virtual machines specifically, either running in a VM or a physical environment, servers, those kind of things. If you're looking for a database migration, we have another tool available, Azure Database Migration Guide. So you can go to datamigration.microsoft.com. And this is, again, an excellent site. So let's say you want to move your MySQL databases to SQL databases. You can just select that option over here. And we'll give you a complete guide on, your pre-migration steps, your migration, and your post-migration steps with, screenshots, everything available. Right. So yeah, this is what I wanted to show you. And yeah, I think we have talked about everything that we could for moving your 2008 and R2 environments to Azure. So of course, look at it in these three different pillars: assessment, migration, and optimization. All right. So I'll hand it over to you, Erik.
All right, great. So thank you very much, Aman, for this comprehensive explanation on how to leverage the EOS deadlines with Azure migration and transformation opportunities. So before we continue with some Q&As, just want to mention that you can visit sherweb.com/partners to have a complete description of the partner benefits available when you resell Azure with SherWeb. So you will see the different models we have and how it's helping you with time to market and your entire strategy across your journey to build an Azure practice. So specifically, you will be interacting with different team members, of course, an account manager, but mostly at the beginning with a solutions architect. We have an entire pre-sales team of architects that will specifically help you out with your scoping, your design, quoting, and understanding all the tools you saw today. So the Azure calculator, we saw the reserved instances and the hybrid benefits. So there's many options and detailed processes around this that you will get support with when you partner with SherWeb for this. So this being said, we'll go back now to Dwayne for the question and answer session.
Thank you, Erik. Thank you, Aman, very much. Just before we get into questions, I would like to mention, our special offer. If you type in the word info into the control panel chat, we'll arrange a one-on-one consultation with you to show you exactly how you can save money and grow your business with SherWeb. We'll also provide you with a pitch deck, about end of support, and show you and let you know how you can actually express this information to your clients and how to demonstrate the benefits of moving to the cloud. And as a bonus, we'll also provide you with a white label content that you can use for pitching and presenting to key stakeholders. The value of this alone is worth thousands of dollars. Plus, it will save you so much time instead of trying to figure this all out by yourself. So just type in INFO into the chat panel, and we'll make sure we'll get back to you as soon as possible. So now we'll go ahead and take some questions. Just as a reminder, please type in your questions in the chat box in the control panel if you have any additional questions. So we got a first question over here by Andy. He's asking, do SQL and Win Server subscriptions via CSP include software assurance?
All right, well, I might be able to answer that one. So if you get server subscriptions through the CSP model, there is that kind of built-in notion of software assurance. It does not include it per se, so you won't get all the benefits that come with software assurance, but you will get things like the Azure hybrid benefits allowing you to run or use that license in Azure to get further discounts.
Okay, awesome, great. We have another great question here from Andre. What type of issues can you run into when migrating from on-premise Windows 2008 server to a VM server running Windows 2016?
All right. Well, on that front, all migrations are a little different to a certain extent. But that said, a migration typically works pretty well from our experience. Those operating systems have been tested times and times again, where whether you're moving from a physical box or a non-virtualized environment to a virtualized environment, or from a virtual to a virtual environment, or whatever the situation might be, there are various tools and migration methods that can make that migration seamless.
Okay, great. We got another question from Mavis. In what scenario would you use hybrid benefit versus reserved instances?
So it's not really a matter of which one to choose. It's more of which one can you use in a certain way where they complement each other, right? So the reserved instance are made to reserve the compute part of the Azure virtual machine, so the CPU and the RAM. So again, that Azure meter for compute, whereas the Azure hybrid benefits will actually kick in for the software components of that same virtual machine. So Windows Server and SQL Server. So you can actually use one or both to replace that pay-as-you-go meter and move that to a paid upfront reserved, let's say, model of pricing instead.
Awesome. I got another question from Cole. How can SherWeb help me convince my clients to shift from on-premise and migrate their environment to the cloud?
Well, we can definitely have that discussion. Of course, it's always case by case, but at the end of the day, what we try and accomplish is assist you in positioning cloud in the right way, right? So there are a lot of reasons to move to the cloud, whether it's for security reasons, for the simple fact that your equipment is obsolete or end of life and you need to move on. Maybe it's the actual software that needs to be updated. So depending on the actual triggers or needs, we can position our offering around that and show the right value of the cloud.
Awesome, great. Thank you guys very much. Let me see if I have any more questions. I got one more. This one is from Philip. How do I determine how much work it will take to move my clients' on-premise servers to the cloud? Is there an easy way to determine the cost of work? So I guess this person's looking for, how do they calculate their ROI?
Yes, so definitely calculating the amount of efforts required for that migration is key in all of this, right? Because it definitely is part of your migration strategy. Now, the good news is there are tools available both from Microsoft and from third parties to assess that migration. So whether you're coming from a virtualized environment and you want to leverage something like the Azure Migrate tools, then that's definitely one way, and it can help you map that migration process so you can estimate how much time will be required. But if you have just general questions on a high level point of view, how much time could it take you to migrate XYZ to the cloud, then we're happy to assist you and have that discussion.
That's awesome. Well, that's all the time we have at the moment. So great, and thank you everyone for here. We truly appreciate you for joining us today. As I mentioned earlier, we're offering a free consultation from SherWeb addressing all your questions and needs about Enda support and how to migrate to the cloud. All you need to do is type info, INFO, in the control panel, and we'll contact you and set up a time for your consultation and provide you with the tools that you need. I encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity worth thousands of dollars. And thanks again for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.